Hello, lovely sewists. I'm Rika, and today we're going to sew this adorable little coat together. You can find the coat pattern in the description box below. The size chart, required materials, and all the important information will be there in one place. I absolutely love the contrasting binding and the sweet little ties at the front. They give the coat such a special touch. I'll be working with a soft Teddy Fleece fabric, which makes this piece extra cozy and perfect for cooler days. Let's get started. First, print and assemble the pattern. You can easily do this at home on A4 or US letter paper, or have it printed in A0 size at a print shop for convenience. For this project, I chose a bouclé-inspired Teddy Fleece fabric. I absolutely love how soft it feels, while still looking refined and subtly elegant. It gives the garment a cozy yet polished finish. Fold your fabric in half and carefully place the pattern pieces on top, following the grain line markings. All pattern pieces already include seam allowances, so there's no need to add extra. Cut out each piece precisely, and don't forget to transfer all the markings onto the fabric. These small details will make the sewing process much smoother and help everything come together perfectly. The pattern includes two different pocket options, so you can decide on the final look: a more classic, elegant style, or a romantic and playful version. Once everything is cut and marked, we're ready to start sewing. We start binding the pocket with bias tape at the bottom of the pocket. At the beginning, fold back the end of the bias tape by about 1 centimeter to create a clean and neat finish at both the start and the end. Place the right side of the bias tape onto the wrong side of the pocket. Unfold one edge of the bias tape and sew along this crease line. While sewing, continuously follow the edge of the pocket. At the corners, stop sewing at the same distance as the seam allowance. Backstitch, then cut the thread. Fold the bias tape at a 45-degree angle so it can turn neatly around the corner. Then continue sewing on the other side of the fold, again stitching along the crease line. When you reach the starting point, fold the end of the bias tape over the beginning so they overlap, creating a clean and neat finish. Sew the final section to complete the binding. Turn the sewn bias tape to the right side of the pocket and fold it fully over the edge. At the corners, the bias tape will naturally turn nicely. The folds create a clean, sharp corner. If necessary, adjust the corners by hand. Pin the bias tape all the way around to prevent it from shifting while sewing. Make sure that the bias tape evenly covers the previous stitching line. Stitch close to the inner edge of the bias tape all the way around to secure it in place. Press everything flat. Proper pressing is essential during sewing. It's what transforms a garment from looking homemade to truly professional. The way seams and edges are pressed can make all the difference in the final finish. The pocket placement is marked on the pattern. Based on the pattern, measure the distance in 2 directions, from the center front and from the bottom edge, to determine how many centimeters away the pocket should be positioned. Here comes a hard decision. You need to choose whether to use the classic pocket or the heart-shaped one. If you already know which you want, you only need to bind that one. I've decided to go with the classic pocket for now, but I'm sure I'll make another coat with the heart-shaped pocket very soon. Place the pocket onto the front piece exactly at the marked position. If you are working with the heart-shaped pocket, align it with the center of this marking. Make sure the sides of the pocket run parallel to the center front. Pin the pocket in place on both sides to prevent it from shifting while sewing. Sew the pocket on along the previous stitching line. Guide the stitching in a U shape around both pockets. If you are making a heart-shaped pocket, sew along the side of the heart up to its widest point and finish the stitching there. Place the front and back pieces of the coat together, right sides facing each other. Carefully align the shoulder seams and side seams, then pin them together along these lines. Sew the shoulders and sides of the coat with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Do not forget to backstitch at the beginning and end of each seam. Fold the sleeve pieces in half vertically, right sides facing each other. Match the sleeve edges precisely and pin them together. Sew both sleeves with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Here as well, remember to backstitch at the beginning and end. Finish the seam allowances of the shoulders, sides, and sleeves with an overlock or zigzag stitch to prevent fraying. If you would like a refined, premium interior finish, you can also bind the seam allowances with bias tape, just as you did along the coat edges. Press the seams flat. Press the shoulder and side seam allowances toward the back. Insert the sleeve into the armhole of the coat, right sides facing each other. At this step, the notches are especially important as they help ensure accurate alignment. The 2 notches on the sleeve indicate the back of the sleeve. Before sewing, always check that the right and left sleeves are not switched. First, match the side seam of the coat with the sleeve seam, placing them directly on top of each other and pin in place. Then, match the shoulder seam to the single notch on the sleeve and secure it with a pin. Align the 2 notches at the back of the sleeve with the 2 corresponding notches on the armhole. Distribute the remaining sections evenly and pin at several additional points to make sure everything stays in place while sewing. Sew around the sleeve with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. A tip for beginner sewers. Keeping an even seam allowance can be much easier with a little help. You can use a seam guide magnet, or simply try a simple trick. Instead of looking directly under the needle, focus on the edge of the fabric next to it. This way, you can guide the fabric smoothly and maintain a consistent seam throughout. Finish the sleeve seam allowance the same way as the previous seams. Next, finish the edges of the coat, starting with the neckline and the hem, using bias tape, just as you did for the pockets. At this step, it is not necessary to fold back the beginning of the bias tape, as a separate strip of bias tape will later be sewn onto the center front of the coat and will cover both the start and finish. Place the bias tape on the wrong side of the coat, align the raw edges, unfold one side, and stitch along the crease line all the way around. Make sure the bias tape ends exactly at the edge of the coat. At the end, trim it flush with the coat edge. Do not leave it longer. Fold and pin the bias tape just as you did with the pocket. In the next step, bind the center front edges of the coat with bias tape. Here, here, it is important to fold back the ends of the bias tape by about 1 centimeter at both the beginning and the end to create a clean and neat finish. Bind the sleeve edges with bias tape as well, just as you did before. At the starting point, fold back the end of the bias tape by 1 centimeter to create a clean finish. Cut 4 pieces of bias tape, each 25 centimeters long. Fold each piece in half lengthwise. On one end of each piece, fold the edge back by about 1 centimeter to create a clean start. Top stitch close to the edge, about 1 millimeter from it. These will become the ties. The placement of the ties is marked on the pattern. Measure these positions along the center front to determine the exact distance for your size. Place the ties onto the coat according to your measurements. Pin them in place so that the unfolded end lies on the wrong side of the coat. Now, fold in that end as well and sew it into position. Secure the bias tape section with 2 short parallel rows of stitching to ensure it stays firmly in place. Press everything thoroughly. And that's a wrap on today's project. I'm so proud of this little coat. It's such a cozy, special piece. And with the 2 pocket options, you can really create completely different looks from the same pattern. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next sewing video. It truly supports my channel and helps me create more patterns and step-by-step guides for you. If you make this coat, I would absolutely love to see your version. Tag me and share your beautiful work. Thank you so much for sewing with me today. Happy sewing, and see you in the next video.